just gonna put my foot on the floor and I'm not listening till I see God or a checkered flag.
Hello, and welcome back to Racing Thoughts and IndyCar Podcast. I'm Meghan Dennis.
And I'm Meg Taylor.
And we got no more IndyCar for a while.
I'm depressed about it. Okay. It's like that post-concert depression that you feel after you see like your favorite artist. But for me, it's the entirety of IndyCar. So this feels great.
But the good thing is, IndyCar said no off days because we have not gone a single business day without some bit of news, good, bad, and ugly.
It has been so busy.
So busy. And we will touch on all of that. But I think to really get into it, we are going to jump into Nashville recap. We did not put out a Nashville preview just because by the time we got it filmed and I could have gotten it edited, the race was well done over, so I think we could recap just as easily. And then really touch into all the news that we've had in the week since then, and yeah, go from there.
Yep. So a little bit different than our usual setup, but race first and then news, just because of the sheer amount of news that we have. So jumping right into it with practice one, not much happened other than Nolan Siegel had crashed. So that was a result of that massive bump that was on the track that not only caused like Nolan to crash, obviously, but like a bunch of other drivers had like really squirrely moments. But then also like in the Indy Next series, like in all the practices and stuff, they were having issues with it. And who was it? It was Marcus Armstrong was interviewed at one point and had jokingly referred to the bump as Lucinda. And I just blamed Lucinda for all of the problems that happened for the entirety of the weekend. So thank you, Marcus, for that absolute gem. But it did cause some problems.
Yeah, well, and Connor Daly even said on his podcast this week that, or I guess last week now, but that they attempted to get like the what are they called? The not welders, but whatever. They tried to make the bump smaller. I don't know what those tools are called. I don't work in construction, but they tried to make the bump smaller and they did it on the wrong part of the track. Like they did it either right before or right after the bump, so it did nothing to actually help the impact on it, and if anything, may have made it a little bit more unstable.
That's fantastic. I love when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that bump was definitely a massive issue. And I remember just watching the practice and being really concerned after seeing, Nolan's crash and everything. But I just remember being really concerned with how that was going to play out in the race, like with all of that. And I don't know, did it really have an impact?
Not in the race. I guess we can go ahead and talk about it with like practice two. That was what ended up, that bump on turn four is what caused Kyle to spin out and end up completely destroying Pink Car, which, I mean, the Andretti guys were able to put it back together, but like it took out his rear wing, it took out the front wing, like it did a number. And I guess jumping ahead to qualifying too, Nolan didn't even get to qualify because how bad a shape the car was in from hitting that bump. So it's just, hopefully that's something they can get figured out. I hope it doesn't result in a total repave because I think overall we had a good race, but like that bump was bad and they need to do something about it before next year for the safety of everyone involved.
100%. I agree. I don't want it to be a complete total repave because I feel like if they do a repave, it's going to end up not being a concrete track anymore, which I actually really enjoyed as like a surface with like the tire management and the deck and all of that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, I really enjoyed the concrete with it. So I really hope it doesn't result in a total whole repave, but who knows? Who knows? But moving right on to quali then. Hate oval qualies. I hate oval qualies so much. It caused me so much stress.
We'll say overall, I didn't think this one was extremely exciting. I mean, the times were fast. I think, 200, 201 is where the top 10 were sitting in between. Other than pole, which we'll talk about in a second, I think, most of the stuff was pretty standard. RRL was still slow as like
so bad.
Every single car was just bad. Stingray Rob had an amazing first lap, and then either his gearbox or his engine, something died on the second one, and he wasn't even able to set a time. As we said, Nolan didn't set a time because he couldn't even run. Most exciting thing, other than that, besides the pole, was the fact that Ginger Christian Rasmussen, was literally on fire. So went out, set a pretty good lap.
Yeah.
or 2 laps, I guess, and then came back in, and car was literally on fire. And like it took them a good like 2 minutes to put it out. Like everyone was like concerned, but not that concerned. And I'm like, you have like big fire right now on a car. I don't know, maybe someone should be moderately concerned instead of you're all just kind of standing around like you're standing at a grill.
Yeah, no, it was really weird. Like, it just felt like they were just kind of like standing there watching it happen instead of like actively trying to do something about it. Like, and I get it. He did, do, the 2 laps and he was coming back into the pits and was like in his or whatever. But like, are there not readily available like fire extinguishers nearby? Like, what? Did it not register to these people that there was a car fire? I don't know. It was just one of those, oh, this feels like it's happening in slow motion of, yeah, there is in fact a fire there. There is a fire that's over there. I'm just making an observation with it. Like
It's
there
like a
was
lot of
no
like, not my
action.
problem. I will say they interviewed Christian like during that, and I can't remember who it was that interviewed him on pit lane, but it was just like, so your car's on fire, and he was like, yeah, it matches my hair, or something like that. That was just, it was hilarious. Where it's just like, oh, Ginger Chris, I didn't know you were funny like that.
And then, so Megan, who got pole?
A certain guy in a pink car by the name of Kyle Kirkwood.
But we were so hyped about it, like more so than I think any other result that we've had in terms of like a pole sitter or like even like a race winner. Like, it was so joyful and like I don't even know how to describe it. It was just the best feeling.
Just so exciting, and he was so excited, and like he was having to wait for the like 5 or 6 guys in front of him to go, and so
Mhm.
you have race cam and you have Kyle cam, and like you just see the smile getting bigger and bigger on his face the whole time, where he's just like, he knows he has it, and it was just that pure like little boy type joy where it's just like, yeah, he did it.
No, it was really great because, like you said, we saw his face as Alex's first lap and the speed, and you can just tell after that first lap what the time is going to be or whatever. And it was pure. It really was very pure. Like that joy that you felt. And then I think it was also really funny, like with his sticker in his P2 crash as well. Like he went to Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. And he was like, does anybody have an extra P1 sticker? Mine's in the wall.
Interesting stat. This was the first season since 2008 that Will Power did not achieve a pole position. So,
That's crazy.
when
I
you
did
think
not
of how
realize.
long that man has been in the sport, that he has gotten at least one pole every year for 12 years. I guess impressive, but I guess kind of sad if you're a Will Power fan and that, well, the record broken. Fun
Yeah.
stat. All right. So last bit for Saturday was P2, which got majorly rain delayed,
Hmm.
which really there was talk going into the weekend of like, oh, are we even going to run? Because hurricane something or other was coming through the area. And really, like, there was big worry, like, were we even going to get a race in? And luckily, Mother Nature must be a racing fan because other than P2 getting like a 2.5 hour rain delay, that was it for the whole weekend, which hilarious rain delay shenanigans. I was watching Peacock during all this, and it was just like, I appreciated that they didn't just cut to commercial or cut to the overhead, shot of nothing. Like they Hinge FaceTime Joseph because he saw that Joseph had his phone on him and was just like, let's see if he answers. And like Joseph didn't realize the camera was also right behind him during all of this. And we got David Malukas in his minion glasses.
Iconic.
Pato complaining that they wouldn't feed him and that it was going to be 2.5 more hours. And then someone went and got him pizza, and he was having a great time flirting with the camera.
I swear, Pato is the most food driven boy I've ever seen in my life because literally he was the grumpiest all weekend. And then he got pizza and he was like the happiest little thing ever. And I'm like, brother, you are truly a Labrador. You are just the most food driven thing. It's fantastic. But it was sad because, it was pit lane, Pato and Alex flirting for, one of the last times. It was hilarious. It's the usual shenanigans between those two.
Yeah, it was fun to see all the shenanigans up and down pit lane
Yeah.
that like we know happens all the time, but we don't normally get to see like on camera, of just
Mhm.
like at the end of the day, yes, they're, grown men and Captain Leg doing what they love, and this, yes, it's their job, but they also are still those little boys who just fell in love with being at the racetrack. And it's kind of fun when you get to see that dynamic and see that, like, no, there's still those 10, 11, 12-year-olds at the end of the day, just having fun and goofing off.
Very true. And it also, I think it speaks volumes too to the healthy dynamic that they have between each other for the most part. Like, you have your coworkers, right? You can get along well as coworkers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be your friends at the end of the day. Or, like, you're stuck doing whatever with these people. You could just kind of like part in different ways, go to your motor home, I'll go to mine, and just like never really interact. But you could really see kind of just like the friendships that they have, which I really enjoyed. It just kind of brings a little bit of light into the other side of the racing world that we don't necessarily get to see, but like we all speculate happens. So we do love rain delay shenanigans, at least these rain delay shenanigans.
And then really the only other part of P2 that was interesting was, well, interesting feels like the wrong word. The only other bit that really happened, I guess, was Kyle's crash the wall. The rest it was running, but even that, there wasn't a ton of running other than like Nolan, because he hadn't really gotten the laps in because it was so late. It was like 8:30 at night. So it wasn't going to be anything remotely like race conditions. And you even had some of the drivers being like, yeah, we're going to do it. Because I mean, of course, like we need it, but it's not going to really tell us anything. So P2 is P2.
Indeed, it was. And that brought us to our race, which happened on Sunday. And all eyes were kind of on the championship here with Will Power and Alex Palou. And I mean, it kind of sucks because Will Power was taken out of that championship contention by his own seatbelts. And that was really, really disappointing as someone who wanted him to win, because I wanted him to get that championship and I wanted him to do well. Like, no offense, Alex, but I really wanted to see Will. It felt very anticlimactic that it was just over within the first 2 laps. Like, that whole fight was over within 2 laps because Will Power's seatbelts just either weren't attached correctly and came loose, or just completely gave up and, just unbuckled. And that's not something that you can kind of mess around with and be like, yeah, no, I'm fine, I'll just race like, no, you can't. That's such a safety concern, because God forbid something were to happen. You can't not have the proper safety in play. And so he had to pit and ended up being like 4 or 5 laps down. And basically that just meant that Alex had secured the championship unless something drastic happened, and nothing did. So, congrats to Alex Palou for the 3rd championship that he's earned. And he earned it 100%. It just kind of sucked that there was so much buildup and anticipatory kind of viewership on the whole thing. And then it just kind of was like, well, it wasn't really a fight that we were all expecting. So little anticlimactic, but still a wonderful season for Palou and a well-earned 3rd championship. Will, I hope to see a better championship run in the future, because I would love to see it.
Yeah, and to touch on the situation with his belts a little bit more. So
Yeah.
it was a malfunction that occurred within those first couple of laps where it fully just gave out, and like IndyCar belts, like you can't really, like not really, you can't as a driver do them up yourself. So that's part of why he had to come in. And Hinch was even saying that like he had that happen where his belts came undone once ever in a qualifying. He's like, you can get through a qualifying because that's 1 lap. He's like, you can't do this for a race. And that like Will 100% made the right move coming in. But from a safety issue, what's more worrisome is it actually happened to him again in the last 10 laps. So happened in the first 10 laps, happened in the last 10 laps. And that like, yeah, these are parts of the car. They get taken off, they get shipped back, they get worked on every week. And so hopefully it's just a matter of end of the season. They're old, they're used. And I guess Belts decided season was done. But it definitely, I think, is cause for concern, and something that I hope IndyCar maybe at large makes a point to look into for this upcoming year, of making sure that like this isn't something we need to worry about like becoming a major safety issue. Because, yeah, Will Power's been in this series long enough to be like, yeah, no, this isn't an option. But, like, I don't know if we can say the same for all 27 cars, that there's not someone out there who's just like, well, let's go for it anyways. I'll figure it out. I hope that's not the case, but I don't know if we can 100% guarantee that.
Yeah, I mean, these drivers are certifiably insane. We know this. So I have zero doubt that if this happened to somebody else, especially one of the younger guys who's really just trying to fight for points and wins and championships, I wouldn't be surprised if that had happened, if someone else was in that position as well. They would have been like, yep, it's fine. I'm going to continue to race. Like Will was smart enough to be like, I'm going on the radio being like, I'm coming in. This is a problem. I don't think a lot of other drivers would have had that same insight, especially with the championship on the line. Especially in that moment, I don't think other drivers would have done the same thing because he knew that coming into the pits was essentially going to ruin his championship.
And then I guess going into the race at whole, I mean, overall it was a good race. Maybe not the best oval of the year, but definitely like I think another case point of all the testing, which this had the least amount of testing, but it didn't have it. But all the testing saying like this is gonna be a bad race and it's not gonna race well, and then being pleasantly surprised by the outcome. I mean, it's one where we're already planning to go to Nashville next year because it was fun. It was, shout out to Scott Porchetta and everything that Big Machine 8.2 put on for this race weekend. They took a bad situation of no longer getting to race down Broadway and having to go 45 minutes outside the city of Nashville and made a really good race weekend. And we ended up with a really good final race of the year.
100%. I watched the Nashville race last year when it was downtown and I really enjoyed it. But, I also very much enjoyed the oval that we saw. And I thought it was really cool too with how Firestone had put out new tires for this race specifically, like new alternates for the ovals, which was a really interesting whole situation. And so we were able to kind of get more strategies with the new alternate tires, and it was fun. So like Megan said, we do plan on going to Nashville next year. That is part of the plan. But it's interesting because we've talked about this in terms of like marketing, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse about it, but like Nashville had some really interesting challenges with the marketing, and it seems like it turned out really well. At least like we knew a bunch of people that went to Nashville and it looked like a blast from what they were doing. So, it influenced us enough to be like, yeah, let's go.
Definitely. And we really got a good race for the end and race for the win in those last 10, 15 laps. So it was a good strategy race.
Very much so. It was interesting because of the tires. Like we had the alternate tires that were giving us a bunch of new rules that we've never had on ovals before. Like the drivers had to have 2 stints of alternate tires and then at least 1 stint of the primaries, right? And so it was really fun to watch and like kind of figure out where that strategy was going. And it did lead to a very interesting last, like you said, 10, 15 laps. I'm really depressed about it, but you know what? It is what it is.
You want to
I'll be
walk us through
happy
it?
for Colton.
I'm happy for Colton. He got his first oval podium. He got his first oval win this year.
Yeah.
Like, he lives in Nashville. I mean, not that anyone wouldn't be excited. One kind of meant a good bit to him. And I think regardless of which of the two you wanted to win, the move that was made for Colton to end up taking that win, you can't deny how impressive it was and how, I mean, truly ballsy it was for him to be willing to stick to that, because it had just as much risk of him going on that high line and getting up in those marbles and it running everybody's race up there. And then we were getting a Joseph Newgarden win.
No, I mean, I like Colton. I really do. I think he's a fantastic driver. And throughout this whole season, I have sung his praises, and he has definitely earned this win. It was just really sad because, I mean, in case anybody didn't know, I am a Pato fan. So I was really hoping that we got that oval win. And alas, we didn't. But again, I am very happy for Colton. And the thing that made it worth it, in my opinion, was seeing his reaction when he parked and he got out of his car and he did like the whole pose where he like threw his arms up and he was like, yeah. Like it was very sweet. It was very wholesome. It was genuine, pure joy. So I was like, you know what? I'm okay with it. I guess I'll be fine.
Well, and how excited his team was, them coming, them picking him up off the ground. Like, he's their little boy. And then, I mean, you have Kyle literally get out of his car. You can see them like falling off the 27 in the background, and he's sprinting across the grass to come congratulate him. And it's just like, it was very wholesome ending to the season, quite honestly.
100%. I think the only thing that I didn't love about it, and this is just, again, a personal thing, was I felt like it being Colton's first oval win was completely overshadowed by Alex winning the championship. And, like, again, understandable. I'm not mad about it. I just wish that it was a little bit more for Colton, too. Because, again, it's so special. But again, Pillow did win his third championship. So, like, very much deserved. And it, again, with all eyes being on that championship battle, it was like, yeah, of course it was going to take up the time.
Yeah, it's sucky timing of one, like, you can't have a championship finish and a race winner and both get celebrated the same way. Like, it can't work that way. But I think I have two other things with Nashville that I kind of want to touch on before we talk about, like, I guess, into the season and final results and everything with that. But as much as he is not in your good graces at the moment, I do want to give a big shout out to Stingray Rob, who was extremely sick and was actually in the ER Sunday morning getting 4 bags of fluids because he had food poisoning or stomach virus or something going on, and still managed to not just get in the car, but he actually managed to finish the whole race. So, like, with that being his last race in the 41, and as we know right now, potentially his last race in IndyCar because he's not signed to a team yet. Credit to him, because I could not imagine having food poisoning and having to go get IV bags and then still having to race a car at the speeds that they go at.
100%. And I do want to clarify that when you say he's not in my good graces, it's literally just because Stingray's car was the car that was in between Pato and Colton used Stingray as kind of part of that whole move. Again, it was fine. It was a good move. I will hand it to them. But again, it was because of Stingray that had happened. So that's why he's not in my good graces. Love the kid. So sad to hear about him being in the ER and being that sick. Don't ever wish that upon anybody. But that's why. That's the only reason.
And the other thing, I have to complain about Arrow McLaren and how I really think they screwed over Alexander Rossi in his last race.
100%. Their strategy made no sense at all.
They
It didn't make
they
sense when they hit him, especially towards the end of the race. I didn't understand any of it.
they didn't know he was leading, like actually leading. They didn't know that was a race for position. And then when the yellow came out, they had him come in before the 5 cars in front of him. And so then he went down a lap, and then because of that, he went down another lap. And from things that I have heard, at that point, they basically said, well, good luck, bud, figure it out, and kind of hung him out to dry. And I think that's just really unfortunate. I, in general, am not happy with, and again, we're not privy to the behind the scenes of it all, but I have not been happy with the fact that there hasn't been a goodbye from Arrow McLaren, and the fact that, like, that's it. Rossi's done. We're not seeing him in Papaya again. And not even a thank you? Nothing? Like, it just rubs me the wrong way.
No, 100%. I hated how Arrow has not really acknowledged Rossi leaving, considering, the past 2 years that he's been there. And like, he's such a loved figure in the paddock. And just like, especially on social media, it just like, it doesn't make sense. Like Meyer Shank did a phenomenal job with David Malukas' send off. I thought that was beautiful. It was heartfelt. It did exactly what it needed to. And, even Dave had responded back and like made his own post about it. I think the part that really frustrates me too is the fact that Rossi made his own posts for this. And we've got nothing from McLaren on their end. And again, coming as a McLaren fan, it makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. making it harder and harder to defend McLaren.
Yeah, I think I'm out on the orange team at this time. We'll revisit during the off season.
They're
They're orange.
papaya.
They're orange. Rossi's out, I'm out. I think when we see what Meyershank did for David, what CGR did for Marcus, even
Yeah.
what like Ed Carpenter did for Renus and them separating, like some effort would be nice. Act like you at least remotely are like thankful that he did drive for you for 2 years.
Yeah, but let's be real. They kind of weren't. They constantly gave him strategies.
It's
Anyways.
frustrating. We'll see what does or doesn't make that. Anyways, so final top 10 of the year. Alexander Rossi, P10 by 1 point.
Ugh.
P9, Santino Ferrucci. P8, Joseph Newgarden. P7, Kyle Kirkwood. P6, Scott Dixon. P5, Pato Award. P4, Will Power. P3 for the Thirsty Threes of Scott McLaughlin. His win managed to get Colton Herta ever championship finish.
Love it.
And of course, as we've already discussed, congratulations to Alex Lowe for his third win in 4 years. It's been a very impressive feat. And I think if you compare like this year to last year, where last year was he dominated everything and he wrapped it up, I think, with 2 or 3 races left. And it was one of the earliest wrap ups in IndyCar history to just, it's a testament to how consistent he was this year. He didn't have the wins to the same level. He just went out and did his job week in, week out. And congrats, my dude. Good job.
Yeah. And we got to see his little baby girl as well, which was really sweet. It was really cute to see with like the oversized hat that he put on her and just like it was wholesome, you know.
Very cute.
Very, very cute.
Very cute.
That was a great way to wrap up the season.
And I guess on the back end with that leader circle, because we have been talking about that for the last little bit, Christian Rasmussen did manage to beat Stingray Robb by 1 point and secure that 22nd position and get Ed Carpenter Racing that extra $1 million as a team they desperately need. It is not confirmed yet. I guess we can touch all into this when we get into the news of news that we got right now. But I would fully expect that we are going to see Christian back in that number 20 car next year. But as of September 23rd at 6:42 p.m. Central Time, he currently does not have a seat for next year. I guess that's the 2024 season.
Indeed it is. What a send-off. Because then, now we have so much news.
So much news.
So much news. We said,
Like-
oh, we're sad we're going to miss IndyCar. And IndyCar says, well, you're not going to get the chance to miss us.
Literally wasn't even 24 hours. And we have had news every single business day.
Yep. Some of it's been fun. Some of it's been great. Some of it has been just downright fascinating. And then we got a whole lot of information that we're going to talk about later.
Yep.
But first things first, Felix Rosenquist has re-signed with Meyershank for at least 2 years, multi-year contract. I think that's fantastic. I think he did a really good job in the 60 car this year. And I really like him as a racer. I think he's very smart, very good, really clean. So I am very happy that he has re-signed, and especially with Meyershank too.
I will say,
And-
I honestly, I thought this news had already been announced when it came out as breaking news. I was like, yeah, I thought we knew that. So I guess I
had
was just
been
working on the assumption.
Yeah, it was all just kind of like implied that it was happening. Like he wasn't really tied with any other teams. And I guess it was just kind of in the works and then it was official. But regardless, just happy to see that he has resigned and extended his contract. In additional Fro news, he got married.
He
So,
did get married.
yay.
Congrats to him.
Congrats
And
to
his
him. It was a
beautiful
beautiful
bride.
wedding. Pato was
We
his
weren't
best
there,
man.
but the pictures were beautiful.
Yes, clarifying. We were not there, but Pato was his best man, and my God, he needs a script for his speeches. I swear, from the clips that we saw, no,
That was an adventure.
truly an adventure. So that's Felix. And then, in addition to Felix with Meyershank, we also have Marcus Armstrong signed on for the 66 car, which Malukas was in prior. And Marcus Armstrong was in one of the Chip Ganassi cars, which, again, as we will talk about with the charter system, they had to, restructure their drivers and their seats. And Marcus was the one that ended up leaving. And I'm excited. Like, you've heard me talk about Marcus. I like him a lot. I think he's a great driver. I think he kind of unfortunately just got overshadowed a lot at Chip Ganassi. Understandable considering who his teammates were. But I mean, he got that seat for a reason. You don't just get into a top seat your rookie year and keep it, mind you, kept it for 2 years and do well without performing and without producing. So I think he's a fantastic driver. And I think Marcus and Felix as a pairing is going to be really fantastic. So I am excited for that.
Yeah, I think it has to be a really, really good partnership. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that partnership also works from a broader, like kind of technical alliance too. With, as Meg said, we are going to episode on charters and what all that's meaning. But with Chip Ganassi having to downsize and Myers Shank forming this technical alliance with CGR. That's kind of how it lined up perfectly for Marcus to end up in that seat, with them having to cut down the number of cars they're able to run. So I think that's going to be a really interesting partnership to watch for the next year. Is that how, because I mean, we've seen it with AJ Foyt and Penske and how that's definitely benefiting them, and how good that, like, we don't like him as a person, but you can't deny that Santino Ferrucci is a good racer and has benefited from having a good car this year and being in that Penske car under the AJ Foyt name. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Myers Shank can do with the backing of Ganassi behind them.
100%. Technically, it's going to be very interesting, and I'm excited for it. And, it is with Marcus coming from Ganassi with this technical alliance. I think he's going to bring a lot to Meyershank, like a lot of knowledge, especially with the car, kind of knows how it works, knows how these things work. So it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
On, I guess, negative side of news, we have had two drivers that are not returning to their teams next year. Linus Lundqvist will not be returning to Chip Ganassi. But Kay is also out of a seat for this upcoming year. When Alex Rossi also doesn't have a seat right now, technically. Officially, I guess that's the right way to put it. Technically, I do think that man has a seat. Officially, it's funny not to tell us. But after 5 years, Renus VK is leaving Ed Carpenter Racing. I do think Renus is going to find a seat. I honestly think there is a chance it would end up in that second primacy. I don't know. I think we'll
Interesting.
see.
Why do you think he's going to end up there?
He brings a lot of experience in the series, and we'll touch on who they have confirmed as driving in a second. But I don't know. I think there's been rumors about, like, he could be a possibility. He knows how to take maybe not the best cars and make them better. And there's been rumors that, like, Renus has been like, yeah, you're not done with me yet. So I think if you look at what's open and what's available, I don't know where else he would land, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess that's fair. I think I think Rossi for sure is like the number one driver that's on the free market right now. And then I think Renus is right underneath him. He's a phenomenal driver. And like you said, he brings cars that are not that great higher than they probably should be. But at what point, because he was there for 5 years, at what point do you understand or like accept like I am a better driver than the cars that I've been given. I don't want to make a lateral move or like a worse move and go into another car that I'm going to have to outperform, And so, granted, he doesn't have a lot of choices. That's the reality of it. But I feel like he's better than the options that are being presented. And like again, same with Rossi. It's way better than the options that have been presented to him. And Rossi taking his seat is just really weird to me.
I agree, but I think that's exactly what's happening. I think that's exactly where we're seeing Alex end up next year is going to be in that 21 car. God, I hope
Mhm.
they let him pick a color that's not lime green, but that's neither here nor there. But when you look at the options, it's that or Ray Hall. And we'll talk about Ray Hall in a second, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
I guess we'll see. It's all just up in the air considering nothing has been confirmed other than Renus is leaving.
And I talked about Prima, and in
Mhm.
exciting news, we do have one confirmed Prima driver for next year.
Finally. And we're so excited about who it is. We've got Callum Ilott back.
Welcome back, Callum Ilott. Time to learn ovals, kid. Such exciting news. And I guess if y'all don't know, that is a joke of that, like, anytime anyone's coming to IndyCar, someone's just like, time to learn ovals. Callum Ilott got done dirty at JHR previously, didn't have a drive for this year. I
Mhm.
am so excited to see him back. I mean, I guess say he didn't have a drive this year. We did see him fill in the McLaren for a hot minute in the sixth at the beginning of the season, but he's such a talented driver. He's had an amazing WEX season as well with Joda. And this is literally one of these announcements that I have not seen a single person who hasn't been over the moon excited about the fact that Callum's back.
Yeah. I mean, he's just like, he just seems like such a nice dude and like everyone loves him. So it's wonderful to see him back. And he is a very good driver. And I've always been impressed with him. So it's exciting. I can't wait. And I think because Callum was a previous Prima driver. Yeah. He was a previous Prima driver. So like he knows the company, he knows the team. Like it's not new for him. So, and he's also not a rookie going into IndyCar anymore. So he's kind of taking up that mantle of like, I'm going to show you guys how this place works, which I like a lot.
Yeah, I think Callum's going to be good for the team. I think it's going to give him the opportunity to get his foot back into what was a not slam shut, but very tightly closed door as
Mm.
it was if it wasn't Prema coming on the grid. Not because he doesn't deserve there, but just because of the matter of, as we're seeing, there are way more drivers than there are seats available for this upcoming season. And that's taking
Mm.
out all these people that keep saying like, oh, they're coming in, da da da. And it's like, no, you can't just decide, oh, your F1 driver doesn't have a home. You're gonna come to IndyCar. We're full. There's one exception to this, and he gets a test in November. He's also not gonna have a seat this year, but that's fine.
Yeah, that is fair.
So I guess before we talk about Ray Hall, I'll go ahead and mention that news too. Logan Sargent was confirmed today that he is testing thermal for Meyershank Racing in November, which honestly I found very interesting. He was in Nashville. For those who I guess aren't familiar with Logan Sargent, he was let go from Williams this year in a whole bunch of mess that just makes me angry to talk about, so we're not going to go down that road. But let go from Williams Racing in F1. He and Kyle Kirkwood are childhood best friends. They've been friends for years and years since they were tiny little boys in Florida racing together. He came to watch Kyle race this weekend in Nashville, but he was also there with his manager and apparently was taking meetings with different teams. It has been rumored that he is going to be doing potentially the test at Iowa. I think it's Iowa. I could have the wrong course, but at Iowa with Chip Ganassi in October. And then it was confirmed today officially that he will be testing with Meyershank Racing at the Thermal Club out in California in November. So do I think that means he's going to have a seat for next year? Not if he's wanting to get paid. And I don't think Logan has that sponsorship money to be able to get a full season in one of the pay seats. Doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. We've seen it with Dale Coyne of putting drivers in. But I think it's exciting for someone who's one of my favorite drivers to see that maybe this could be an opportunity, if not next year, the year after. And at least like teams are giving him the chance to see if this could be an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it. Just purely based off of you and your love of Logan Sargent. And I am a fan by association as a result. In F1, he was never my fave until Meghan decided that she was going to take this Florida boy under her wing and be like, yes, this is mine. I'm
And
just
it was
excited.
buy one, get one free because I got Kyle
Oh,
from it too.
you did. That was kind of your avenue into all of indie stuff too. I mean, I forced you into it, but you realized that Kyle was best friends with Logan. And you were like, I'm going to support that guy. And here we are.
It all comes back to Florida, apparently. It's like that Taylor Swift song.
But yes, it is really nice that these teams were holding these meetings with him. And who knows what the future will hold for Logan Sargent in IndyCar. I do think personally he would do very well in the series. I cannot say the same for other F1 drivers, which is why we talk about it like this of just like, no, stay over there. Like, stay in F1. We don't need you over here. We barely have enough room for our favorites anyways, so no thanks. But I mean, there's always been talk around Logan with the Prima seat. So I guess we can't rule it out until they announce who their second driver is. So his name is always going to be thrown into that conversation.
Colton Herta apparently knows who has that second Prima seat. And I'm just like, Colton, you can let me know. I will tell 14 people because that's about the average listeners that we have. And that'll be it.
You spill that secret to our listeners. I guarantee you the podcast will blow up.
Unfortunately, I do not have connections to Colton Herta for him to give me this information. But
Manifest.
mhm.
Listen, we're manifesting hard for next year for everything.
Last bit of news, we got some actual serious, some serious news happening with this one.
Most insane thing to watch go down online. And I was at work. I had a class. It was bizarre.
For legal reasons, I do want to make sure that what we are saying is I will open with the fact that Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing headquarters was raided by the feds last week. That is a fact. Everything we are saying after this point is speculation and is allegedly what is taking place. So that is
we are
our
just
disclaimer.
regurgitating what we've heard.
Yes, this is not confirmed news. We are not accusing RRL of doing anything. We are just reporting on the rumors that we have heard. Okay, so with that disclaimer in place, RRL was raided by the feds last week. With that, it means feds don't get involved unless they pretty much already have a case done for you. That is historically the case anytime that the FBI are coming and actually doing a raid. It started at like 8:30 in the morning. They told all the people working in headquarters to leave all their electronics, leave their computers, their phones, and basically get out. And then I think feds were gone by like 4 p.m. that day. What has come from various sources after as allegedly what could have happened is that RRL's chief mechanic technical guy, I don't know this man's official title, but someone in their technical development program is a previous Andretti global employee. And with this, as we have discussed, as Meg has discussed in depth, IndyCar is a spec series, which means for the most part, these cars are all the same. However, one of the few things that they can be able to design and create themselves are their shocks and their dampers. And this is something that, as fans, we don't see on the cars, but is something that these teams will spend upwards of over $1 million a year in creating the designs for. And what is suspected and what is being said to have potentially been what happened is that the guy, when he left Andretti, took whether it was their CAD designs, whether it was a notebook full of something, whether it's a computer, he took something that had Andretti's intellectual property on it and has been using it at RRL in some form. And with this means someone at Andretti did have to call the feds for this to be escalated to a federal case. But this is intellectual property law, so intellectual property law is covered by the feds. It is a federal crime with federal consequences to it, and this includes counterfeit carbon. So this is why they would be the ones directly in call to this case, as opposed to it being because they're all in Indiana or all in the US, why it wouldn't be maybe smaller levels of government. That's really all we know at this point. RRL has made a statement of just being hey, it's an open, ongoing investigation. So because of that, we're not going to address any comments at this time, but we will provide more information once we can. Andretti refused to comment, which is why people are even more speculative that, yes, they were the ones who called to make this a case. And Graham Rahal was having a real rough day on the Twitter, and I wanted to be buddy, it's probably best to just log off and go hang out at your new car dealership with your special coffee.
Yeah, no, this whole thing is insane. I mean, again, as we've mentioned many times, this is all allegedly, so we don't actually know. But my question is why did this happen now? And also, clearly, it didn't really help RLL with their car this year. If it's about dampers and shocks, it is all about speed. So, like, clearly it didn't help RLL considering they've had a very slow car. But I would just be interested to know how Andretti found out about this and, like, what the process was to get to this point. Like, were they waiting for the end of the season to make this happen? Obviously, like a federal case like this takes months and months of work to, do. So I'm just nosy. I want to know all the details. And obviously, since it's ongoing, we don't know. But as soon as we know some actual information, when things get confirmed, or if there are any more alleged rumors, we'll let you know as well. But it's all just a big question mark. But my favorite thing that's come out of this is the internet calling RLL Raid Hall. The internet is a beautiful place sometimes, truly.
Yeah. And again, this is all speculation. We're not even the source of any of the news that we do have. I've gone through a few different places to be able to get this, but it's something we'll follow, something we will keep up with. I do think it is good to make note of that if you are ever dealing with federal case stuff, though, the feds aren't like state or local government where they come for you and then try to build a case. If the feds are coming, that case is already made. So I think it's just going to be a wait and see on what happens. And they have two open seats right now. So on both sides of the sense of like, if I'm RRL trying to find my drivers, I'm very worried on what is this going to mean for this upcoming year and what is, Big Boss IndyCar going to do too, as far as how does this look like? I don't know. But also on the side of if they have signed their drivers for next year and just haven't announced it yet, and I'm worried about my own personal like Brandon, I'm getting real worried right now. I'm being like, do I want to run the risk of being tied to this team? But on the flip side, well, I can't run the risk of not having a car to drive at all.
Yeah, no, that's a really tough situation to be in. And like, I remember when this whole thing dropped last week, it was around the same time that there were rumors of Rossi going to RLL. And so I got really concerned as a Rossi fan because, like you mentioned, what implications does this have on the driver? But like, I think since they have two open seats, whoever ends up in those seats, if, nothing happens to the team in terms of like the charter and their seats and everything, right? No one can blame the drivers for this. This is not a driver's fault. Like, this is a very clear separation of team and driver, I think. And it's better to have a seat than not, for sure. Use that for a year and then see what else opens up in the future. Because personally, I wouldn't trust a team that is being accused of this. But that's just a me personal thing. So,
Yeah, and we'll circle back around as more breaks because this is surely not going to just disappear and go away. I'm quite certain. But yeah, and I'll add some stuff to that on you talk about charters when we talk about charters because I think that could open up an interesting point as well. But we'll get there.
yeah, it's a whole new can of worms that we are going to be doing a bonus episode on. So, small little tidbit of information that will be coming out very shortly after this.
But I think that might be the episode.
And just like the 2024 season, it ends. That's it.
That's
Okay,
it.
bye.
Bye.
Imagine if we ended there.
Be really funny. It might end. No, we aren't going anywhere in the off season. It may or may not be as frequent as we have been, but we'll still be around. If there's topics you want us to talk about, let us know. We will gladly take that into consideration. We do have some stuff history land wise. We will gear up for the 2025 season. I think there's some good stuff in the works there. And as more and more news breaks, because I am quite certain we aren't done with that yet. We'll be around. We'll be filling you in on what we know and what we've heard.
Yeah, and like Megan said, we have ideas of stuff that we're going to talk about in the off season. It's just not going to be an every week thing just because of off season and stuff. So we'll talk about some stuff. If there's anything technical you want to know about, let me know because I would love to do deep dives into stuff that's not going to be utterly boring. And yeah, we'll be back with our regularly scheduled programs just infrequently.
All right, go check out our episode on the charters because that is news that we need to talk about. All right, bye.
Bye.